show with no name. I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson, as always.
Yes, indeed, you are, and I'm glad to see you. It's been a long week, and I'm glad to be here because this show is therapeutic for me. It's cathartic. It helps me process things, and it allows me to get things off my chest that I ordinarily wouldn't be able to. So, you know, so do you have a drink tonight, or
I am just drinking Merlot tonight.
you know what? Funny that you mentioned that. That's exactly what I'm drinking.
All right, on.
The whole thing about great minds, great
Yeah,
minds.
yeah, yeah.
So, without much ado, we're going to go right into the subject at hand, and it is this: what does it mean to harden your heart? What does it mean to harden your heart? And before I get into that, the question du jour is there a general hardening of the heart toward of humans toward one another these days? If so, what's causing it?
Hmm.
And if that is indeed the case, what are the ramifications for humanity?
Hmm.
And finally, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
And I always think about there was Stevie Wonder in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, he did an album called Songs in the Key of Life, which in my opinion was Stevie Wonder's magnum opus. If you're a Stevie Wonder fan, you may disagree, but it was a 2 album set, and it was full of brilliantly written, brilliantly orchestrated, brilliantly arranged songs.
Hmm.
And one of them was a pseudo gospel song called Love's in Need of Love Today.
Mm.
And I have preached this. I preached this message. I don't know. It had to have been like 100 times
Hmm.
in my ministerial career. I've said this in blogs. I've cited this so many times because love needs love to survive.
Mm.
I would say that the fuel for love is
Hmm.
love.
Hmm.
And when you shut off the fuel supply to anything living,
Hmm.
it begins to die out. And it's funny to me because like one of the things that I learned about the hardening of heart was this, that it's not to lose emotion. That's not what hardening of heart is to turn down your capacity for empathy.
Hmm.
It's to basically shut down that part that says that I want to see it through the eyes of others.
Hmm.
And so when you go back and look at the Bible, and it said that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and that's a whole nother subject there. I can't understand why God would have to harden Pharaoh's heart if Pharaoh's heart was already hardened, but that's another story. But the thing is that when someone's heart is hardened,
Hmm.
it's not like losing emotion. It's turning down the capacity for empathy. In other words, I can't see it through the lens of someone else. And I think that part of the problem with humanity right now, and this has been an incredible week for this kind of subject. I mean, I told you when I messaged you earlier, I said my brain is like on fire right
Yeah.
now. There's so
Yeah.
many things in my head and in my heart right now, so many things that I could say, and this hardening of heart comes to mind because there are actually Christian pastors, Christian leaders that
Yeah.
are out here saying that empathy is toxic.
Yeah.
And I think about this like that when Jesus encountered the rich young ruler,
Hmm.
and he said, I've given to the poor, I've done this, I've done that. And Jesus said, it said, and Jesus loved him.
Hmm.
And what does that mean? And you and I, we talked about this, and we talked about this on the show. We talked about this privately. That love is basically empathy and compassion.
Hmm.
So it's like Jesus took a look through the eyes of this rich young ruler and cared about what he was feeling. It said
Hmm.
he loved him, and then said, "Take all you have, sell it to the poor, take up your cross, and follow me."
Hmm.
And it said that the rich young ruler went away sad because of that. In other words, Jesus had empathy for him, but what Jesus was trying to do was give him a gut check, because there is nothing in Christianity that tells you to give up everything.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's nothing in there. And I've preached this many times. Nothing that tells you to give up everything. But it said this is what this guy was yoked to. And this is where his empathy was lacking, because he clearly had no empathy for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus loved him. He had empathy and compassion for him. He saw it through his eyes. And then he said, here's your gut check. So all you have, give it to the poor.
Yeah.
And so here we are, you have this young woman, mother, wife, community activist. She's gunned down by an ICE agent. And I'm going to tell you something. I've watched this film 100 times from multiple angles. And this was really just cold-blooded murder.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it any other way. And what troubles me is there's so much noise out here in the conservative, the MAGA sphere.
Yeah.
That has absolutely no concern for this woman. They said, well, if she didn't get in their way, if she just follow orders and all of that, and this is the thing, non-compliance is not a capital crime. Neither is interfering with law enforcement. And people say, well, she played stupid games and she got stupid prizes. And, I would see or understand this if the woman pulled out a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, then you really did play a stupid game, and stupid prizes come along with that. Tell them what they won, Johnny.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. And for people to just have thrown out any empathy, why did this woman? Why was she blocking ICE? Why did she? They said that she had participated in protests against ICE before. Why did she do that? And so one of the things that I think about is that that this whole ICE thing, I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. It's one thing if people are thieves or vagabonds, criminals, and they're I get it. If there's some criminal activity, if there are criminals and they're found by due process to be guilty of crimes, yeah, deport them, or imprison them here, whichever comes first. But most of these people are just trying to live their lives, and they got over here the best way they could to do the best that they can and do it with what they have. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the idea of anything illegal happening. And I think that if you come over, without the proper credentials, without the proper vetting, there is something criminal to that. But is it criminal to the point where you have to go and do door-to-door roundups, where you have to actually kill people? Right. That's the problem. And not to get too deep into that, but why is it that there's a whole swath of the population that just has no empathy for this woman? Mm-hmm. And that's where I am today. What is it? What does it mean to harden the heart? What is it that causes it? What are the ramifications for humanity, and what can we do about it? These are the four things that I'm hoping that we could discuss tonight. So over to you, my friend.
Yeah. But boy, it's a heavy topic, and I've been thinking about it too a lot. Having done most of my mission work in, the Eastern European blocs, Russia, it gives you a different perspective. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, what we're seeing, I think, is, it's state-sponsored violence. I mean, what else can you call it, And I think it's very hard for us as Americans to understand. Like, one of the things, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine with social media. God, I got so many things running through my brain.
Is it like you were talking about this last night, the culture of grievance?
Yeah. But also
last week, rather.
Yeah. But also social media, I think, has caused us to lose some of our empathy, because there are mechanisms. So there's this thing called polyvagal theory, and it has to do with the vagus nerve and the fight or flight response. And most people are aware of, fight or flight, fight, flight, and freeze, all that stuff. But there's also a vagal response of safety. So what that shows us is that as we grow up in relationship, as we grow up in family, we do learn a certain amount of empathy. And so the way the brain is wired, the way the vagus nerve is wired, is to respond to your face specifically, to respond to your expressions, to respond to how you're treating me, and then as a byproduct of that, how you're treating me in response to how I'm treating you. So what that means is not only is my autonomic nervous system scanning for danger, it's also scanning for safety. And so from a polyvagal theory perspective, if like when I met you in Dallas, gosh, was that last year?
Yeah, year before last.
Like to know you online is one thing, to know you in person is something completely different. And you do carry such a, for whatever people's perception of you might be online, you have a very warm, welcoming presence that you carry that is not possible to pick up on even doing Zoom calls. So in other words, what I'm saying is when I met you, it's like, I mean, I loved you before, but it's just like, man, I love being in this man's presence, if that makes sense. Like, and so when we're just responding to posts or we're responding to videos or we're responding to pictures, now you throw in AI that can do all kinds of crazy stuff to confuse us, really to confuse us. And so Daniel Goleman, he's famous for his work on emotional intelligence. He also, it was either he or his wife wrote a book on social intelligence and talked about how we're wired for empathy or compassion primarily through our visual responses, specifically as it relates to that polyvagal theory and the interactions, the stuff that we pick up on subconsciously, right? It's impossible to do that in text, email, and on social media. And so especially since the pandemic, we have just, I still say a lot of what we're seeing in our culture, from my perspective, and just totally just my opinion, is a result of the social isolation that we experienced as a result of the pandemic that I don't think we've gotten back to, and I don't think we'll ever get back to community the way that it once was, right? Like most of my most positive social interactions, because of deconstruction and because of a lot of different things, has come from people like you and people that I've met online and stuff, but there's a totally different dynamic. And so we all know that you'll say things in comments that you probably wouldn't say in person. There was that whole situation with the Pittsburgh Steeler, was it wide receiver or something?
Yeah.
That was in person, but think about it this way. We've both been to professional sporting events. There's no way in hell that fans would say half the stuff that they say when they're pissed off if they were actually in the presence of that player. And we say, well, they're in striking range, but I don't think it's just the fear of violence. There's this element of compassion and empathy that we're hardwired for when we're face to face with someone.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much social media interaction. There's so much, this 24-hour media cycle, I think, has really damaged us. So in the way it hardens our hearts, right? Because we can, it's so, well, I say a lot, the map is not the territory, right? And the point of that phrase is that we're dealing with representations of reality rather than reality itself.
Yeah.
And there's a neurological reason for that. I don't actually see the color red. It's a representation of a certain spectrum of light that I see. But when we're dealing with 24-hour news cycles and they're talking about people we're dealing with an abstraction of people, if that makes sense, rather than actual people.
Yeah.
And so you can watch a traumatic event. You can watch someone be murdered in a video, or you can be present just at someone's death or someone's suffering. There's a totally different emotional impact.
Yeah.
It's totally different for, the woman that was taking the video in Minneapolis. Her response reaction is going to be totally different than anybody that sees it on television. Even if she'd seen it on television,
right. It's
going to be totally different. And that's where I think that's where I think a lot of this problem is, I think it is sort of a unique challenge in our day and time with all of the social media and just media in general, that we live primarily. I mean, we can live our entire lives. How many people just sit on Facebook all day long, and this is not a criticism. It's been proven to be addicting. Sit on social media all day long, and that's most of their interaction. And they're getting angry because the other side, we want a scapegoat. It's the other side doing their thing. Yeah. So I can say this, being part of a community that gave you Lauren Boebert in Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, you drive down my street, Derrick, if you were here and you drive down my street, you'd see probably 6 houses flying still. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't paid attention, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're still flying "Let's Go Brandon" flags. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in personal interactions, they're really good neighbors. Like the dog gets out, with the exception of one guy. The dog gets out. They're out there chasing the dog with you. They're out there helping you. They're out there talking to you. So if all I had was the representation, and I'm not in any way, I hope people understand, I'm not in any way affirming that, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be empathic here, right?
Yeah, and that's what you're doing. You're extending empathy into an area that is uncomfortable for you to be empathetic about.
Yeah, but go ahead. I
was going to say there's something to that, because having empathy should not always be comfortable.
Yeah, but also what I'm saying is, like, on the other side, like in the one-on-one personal interactions, we're talking about really caring people when they're face to face, when they're your neighbors, when you're sitting down talking to them. Totally different than being a keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And as long as you stay off the topic that triggers them, because they've been so programmed by watching the news cycles that they watch or whatever echo chamber that they've been plugged into, and you take it outside of that and you take it into the realm of just human interaction, you get a totally different person than the person who's, arguing with their relatives at Thanksgiving, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I do think I do think social media is part of the problem. Just media in general, I think, is part of the problem. And then, as you were talking about Jesus and the rich young ruler, I was sitting there thinking, like, whatever Christianity has become, and I'm talking about evangelical, Pentecostal, prophetic,
mainstream Christianity,
Christian nationalism, right? That isn't what I signed up for in the late 80s, early 90s at all.
No.
And it's interesting to me, like, my deconstruction story, it wasn't this, like, sort of slow process for me of, like, studying Bible scholarship and all that stuff. I mean, there was an element of that, but it was very sudden for me. But it's interesting to me that happened in August of 2016, which means I started to make my exit before American Christianity really got co-opted. Well, it was going on before, but it really hit the pedal to the metal in terms of a political thing. And so, when I was younger, I would read, I was inspired by the Gospels, right? I was inspired to help the sick. I remember I did prison ministry for a while, and anybody that's ever done prison ministry, I'm sure it's the same everywhere. You have to go through, relatively extensive training because you're going into an environment that's not like going to Walmart, right?
Yeah.
And I remember they asked us this question, why are you getting involved in prison ministry? And when it became my turn to answer, my answer was the sheep and the goats, right?
Yeah.
Like Jesus said, when I was sick, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think as a young man, I was so inspired. Like, I could give my life to chasing dollars, which was what all my friends and stuff were doing, or I could give my life to alleviating suffering based on the gospel and based on the teachings of Jesus. I can be involved in healing ministry. I could be involved, in that case at that time. I mean, we're going back 20 years or more. Prison ministry, help missions. I was really inspired to do
Street
stuff.
ministry, homelessness.
We did all that, man. We went out. I went and served at the soup kitchen, the local soup kitchen, every Wednesday night for years. That's where I first started preaching, right? Like my first preaching gig wasn't in front of a church. My first preaching gig, because the way they were set up as a Christian mission, and to get in there, they were always trying to fill preaching, and they didn't like me. They wanted to throw me out because I was giving these guys too much trouble. I'll never forget it. I'm like 20 years old, right? And I'm like preaching this passionate message, and they're like, no. Like, you're giving these guys false hope. You're causing problems. We just want you to give a simple heaven or hell message.
Fire and brimstone.
And then sit with them and talk to them and serve and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, that's not me. Like, you need to find somebody else if that's the case. Because I genuinely believed that, I was sharing things with them that could improve their quality of life. Our mission work involvement, we were very involved with supporting orphanages in Africa where, children had lost their parents. I'll never forget the first time we were in Kenya. We pulled up, we were in an area in the bush, they call it. That's what they call it. That's what the locals call it, where they had never seen a white person. Never. Yeah. So this isn't a place where Americans had been going, and it was an orphanage, and all of these children had parents who had died from AIDS and the AIDS epidemic and whatever. And we walked into that village, my wife and I, and these kids just, they start touching our skin. They want to know if we've been boiled.
Wow.
Like, why is your skin white? And they wanted to touch my wife's hair. And then you have these children that are asking you, and at this time we weren't able to have children, and they're asking you, would you be my mommy? Would you be my daddy? Just the level of desperation, driving in a van to get there and stopping in some of these villages and kids pounding on the window and asking for pencils or asking for money for school, things like that. And I know I'm taking a long time here, but that's what I signed up for, right? I didn't sign up for this other stuff. I didn't sign up for empathy as, whatever the hell they're saying. Like they've lost their minds, right? I didn't sign up for Dominion Christian nationalism. Let's take the 7 mountains and rule society. Like, for me, Christianity became an aberration. And it really became clear to me in the pandemic, because I'm like, what the hell? Like, we're supposed to care about our neighbors. We're supposed to care about the sick. Why the fuck wouldn't you wear a mask?
Right.
Like, we had several immune compromised elderly people in our church, and they're wanting us to start up right after Easter, and they're calling me they called me a pedophile, because that's when the fucking QAnon shit was going around.
Yep.
And so I was being a sheep, because I was following public health guidelines, but my concern wasn't like, oh my God, the government said, so I better, it was more like, we have compromised people, and you're asking me to literally put their lives in danger just so we can have a service. That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't reflect the values that I've preached for years, or that I think comes from Christianity. And so here's an interesting, this might be a weird like left turn, and you're welcome to cut me off.
Good.
Don't shoot me.
I have empathy for you, Aaron.
But as you were talking about Jesus, and I'm like, yeah, like giving to the poor, like making your life count for something. Set salvation aside, set all that aside, making your life count for something that adds value to other people and is alleviating suffering. To me, that was the core of the gospel always. Right. And then I think about the time period in which, if we just look at it as a story, as a myth, the time period in which those stories arose, I don't know if you could get a less empathetic in society than the Romans. I mean, they're crucifying people. They're feeding people to lions. Their entertainment was the gladiator.
First century Rome was something else.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me that however that originated, there's this element of almost subversive. There's almost a subversive element to it, right? Like you're in this bloodthirsty dominion, imperial culture. And you think about the leper colonies and stuff. So here you have Jesus visiting the lepers and eating with the sinners, and just that subversive element that was almost trying to introduce empathy, if you will, back into human society.
You said a word right there. True Christianity, if you're going to follow that. True Christianity must be subversive.
Right.
It's anti-empire. It's anti-establishment.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I don't know. Anyway, I kind of rambled there, but I'll kick it back to you.
No, it's not rambling at all, man. You had a lot to say, and you said a lot. And one of the things that I want to kind of get to in this discussion is like, okay, first of all, what I want to do is I want to say something to everyone out here who feels like they don't feel like they have to be empathetic. The first thing that I want to say to you is you're not evil because you lack empathy. We have a lot of things that overload us. We have social media. We have the news media. We have algorithmic response. There are all kinds of different things that cause us to to kind of get off the empathetic square. And there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. Like one of the things that we have fear disguised as certainty. Fear disguised as certainty. In other words, I'm certain that these people that don't look like me or don't talk like me are a threat to me. I'm certain.
Yep.
And that certainty, and this is the thing, I believe in confidence and not necessarily certainty. And this is something that you taught me because I was certain that there was no God. Certain. But what I've learned is to embrace the mystery. Maybe there is, and maybe there isn't. But I believe that there is something greater than humanity, whatever that is. But what I've learned is not to be certain about anything. I've learned to be confident in what my thoughts are and to express some confidence. But, to say that I'm certain, no. Another thing is that we place our identity over our integrity. That who I am and what I am tribally that somehow exceeds my need to be honest.
Yeah.
And this is where intellectual honesty comes in, because when you're rooted in your identity correctly, intellectual honesty follows that. It's an outcrop of that. But what happens is that we place our confidence in our identity to the point where we're willing to compromise integrity, where my identity is such that I don't care whether people are lassoed compartmentalized and shipped off to a foreign country. My identity supersedes my integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have like moral outsourcing, where what we're doing is, our institutions and our ideologies, our religions, that they do the thinking for us.
Yeah.
Where you're abdicating original thought
Yeah.
in favor of groupthink.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have to do, you have to remain true to your own moral compass. You have to remain true to that. But because I always say, like, I like Sir Mix a lot because he likes big butts, and so do I. The but is that even though I may believe something, I have to hold on to it loosely and say, okay, there is the possibility that I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I have to be willing to let go of that to embrace what is right, because that's how I grow. That's how I get better. And one of the things is that we honestly don't want to get better anymore. We take a posture of stagnation and say this is okay. And that's a problem. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is like pain without processing. And this is one of these areas where you are a leader, an absolute leader, because you talk about trauma, you talk about pain, you talk about being objectified, you talk about being downtrodden or disenfranchised, but you have this pain, but what do you do with it? Do you sit in the pain, or do you mindfully process it? Do you do the light work, the shadow work? Are you processing your way through the pain? And that's the thing that a lot of people, they don't want to do that. They're content to dwell in their pain, and that's a dangerous thing. I always talk about this one story that this guy, he comes into a doctor's office, and he's wearing a trench coat, but you can see something protruding from the inside of the trench coat. And the doctor says, well, what's your problem? He says, let's take off the coat and let's have a look at you. And so the guy takes off the coat, and he has an arrow stuck in his side. He has an arrow stuck in his side. And the doctor says, wow, that's pretty fucked up, but we can fix that easily. We could schedule you for surgery and get the arrow out, and you'll be right as rain in no time. And the guy says to the doctor, he says, no, doc, hold on for a second. When people see this arrow in my side, they have compassion for me. When people see this arrow in my side, they want to talk to me about the arrow and about the pain that it's causing. And doc, when they see this arrow in my side, they want to give to me.
Yeah.
To help me to be better, to make my life easier. He says, so doc, he said, I don't want to get the arrow removed. I just want something for the pain.
Yeah.
In other words, the guy didn't want to process the pain. He wanted to figure out what was the expedient way of living with it. And that's a problem that humanity faces, is that there's some genuine pain that I don't have a job, pain that my neighborhood is not the way it is, pain because it seems like people are getting ahead of me and I'm working so hard and I can't seem to keep up. And so you have this pain. And then you have institutional pain. The educational system hurt me. Church hurt me. My neighbors hurt me. I've been hurt racially. I've been hurt sexually. And all of this pain demands some processing, because if you're going to have healing, you got to have processing. You got to go through the process. Yeah. There is no express route to getting right. So those are the things that I want to discuss, like as far as what's causing it, what is causing it. So I'm going to kick it back to you and let you process that.
Yeah, I think the first thing comes to mind is we value image over process, right? Or we still value image over authenticity. And I guess like it's amazing to me that we all experience this and we all have to process this. but we seem to be totally disconnected from the idea that other people are in the same boat, right? That other people are going through the same thing. And I think as a society, like grief, I'll give you an example. When a job I worked when I was in my I was 23 because it was right after I got married, and became friends with one of my coworkers, and it was a retail job. And his daughter was one of the early, she was put on Prozac. And especially in teenage daughter, Prozac can take you in the opposite direction. You know, it can help, but it can take you in the opposite direction. I remember I was taking trazodone because I couldn't sleep. And it was right around the time that I deconstructed. So maybe that's why I deconstructed was trazodone. But
drugs will do that, man.
Yeah. And I went through this really kind of weird period after I started taking trazodone where unaliving myself, I don't want to get flagged. I don't know. I watch these videos where they're careful about their language. I don't know if we need to be careful about our verbiage or not. And I never had any kind of suicidal ideation in my life. And my life was going pretty well. There wasn't like tragedy or there was nothing bad. But all of a sudden, I just like, it made sense to me. Like I could understand. I was like, oh, I get it now. I get why people get to this place. And it was really weird, right? Mm-hmm. And then Julie tells me, she's like, could it be a side effect of the medication? I'm like, I don't know. So I looked it up. And sure as shit, like less than 1% of the people who take trazodone will start having suicidal ideations. And I'm like, how does that work? That a pill triggers those specific thoughts in the brain. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I got off the trazodone and all of that happened. So his daughter was depressed. She got on Prozac. She ended up taking her own life. Mm. And he had 3 days. This just still blows my mind. 3 days of bereavement. And then he took his vacation. So he was out for about 2 weeks. And he comes back after 2 weeks after dealing with this tragedy that is just unimaginable to me.
Yeah.
And I remember he sold furniture and somebody was just yelling at him because he'd ordered the wrong color or something. Something was wrong in the order. And just really giving him the business. And I remember watching him, and he was being so professional, and he was being so empathic in the middle of that situation. I'll never forget it, because I thought, you're yelling at this dude because you got the wrong upholstery, and he just lost his daughter. Like, I don't know, it just imprinted me. But I think part of the problem is like, what the hell are we doing in corporate America, giving people 3 days to grieve the loss of a child?
Yeah. Or the loss of anyone.
Yeah.
I could talk about that in the wake of my mother's passing.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And it's just like, man, as a society, we don't acknowledge pain, you know. I remember another situation where a child was lost, and I went to the funeral, and it was one of these hyper faith churches, right? Mm-hmm. And this was back when the Hillsong stuff was really popular, and one of the songs was, you know, you've turned my mourning into dancing. And
yeah,
they're doing this song, and they're like dancing around, and the entire funeral was geared around this apologetic for, well, I still believe in healing. And then the pastor prophesied in the middle of the meeting to the parents. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, there's no, like, these are institutions that people turn to in, like, what the fuck? I remember just walking out of that service and just thinking, did I go to a funeral, or did I go to a Halloween
revival?
Costume. It was like a costume party.
Wow.
You know? And so I think as a society, we're so commercially driven and whatever that we just suck at the process part. And it's not safe. I mean, we've definitely, I think Monica Lewinsky did a documentary for Netflix or one of the streaming services that I watched. You know, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Shame. And she kind of identifies herself as patient zero, right?
Yep.
Like there's just no capacity for growth. There's no capacity for failure. There's no capacity for mistakes. And then forget restoration or learning or growth or so it's not just processing pain. It's like we got to be perfect, and we're going to sum up a person's life based on their worst 15 minutes with no context.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's just we got a lot of problems as a society. But I think that is like one of the things I was thinking about with this guy. You know, this person who, you know, involved in this incident, this ICE agent that took this woman's life, and what. And I want to be careful here, but because I in no way am endorsing that kind of abuse of power. I think it's horrible. But at the end of the day, like even he's a product of the system, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when we adopted Elijah and we got him 7 days old, and he came home addicted to substances, and because he was exposed to them in the womb, and he was on oxygen and just a whole host of problems. He couldn't sleep. You know, we had to hold him for the first, God, I want to say year. Like if you weren't holding him, he wouldn't sleep and he'd just scream and cry. So my wife and I would take shifts where, you know, I was more of a night owl and I didn't have to be at work at a certain time. So I would have him till about 3 and 4 in the morning, just rocking him and holding him. And then she'd get up and I'd hand him off. And then I'd go get a few hours sleep before she went to work, and I'd take because she had to hold him the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's an interesting experience, the way I experienced it. I won't speak for everybody else, but I remember bringing him home and like, this is not my kid. I didn't cause these problems. I don't really have any responsibility here. And it's really kind of a weird thing to take an oath to become a father, because you have to go before a judge and you have to take an oath that you're going to treat this child like it's your own child. And, you know, and I took that oath very seriously. And I remember looking at him, and you have no idea genetically, predisposition, just nothing, right? And I remember looking at him thinking, I'm going through hell, like I'm losing sleep, like any new parent, right?
Yeah.
Like losing sleep, worried, you know, all this stuff. And I'm like, and yeah, I have no obligations to you whatsoever. I'm voluntarily obligating myself to you to try to give you a better opportunity at life. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I don't believe in the blank slate theory at all. I think that's been disproven. We definitely have genetic.
Yep, we have predispositions.
Anybody that's had more than one kid knows you come out of the womb with some stuff, right?
Yep.
It's your temperament and stuff. Because Josiah and Elijah totally different than their brothers. But I remember looking at him, and it's a really weird story, Derrick, like 2 songs playing in my head. Who's the guy that wrote Cats in the Cradle?
God, I love that song. I can't think of the.
Yeah, and then Dan Fogelberg, leader of the band, right? Like those 2 songs, 2 competing narratives. And I remember looking at him really young and thinking, like, what kind of dad am I going to be? Am I going to be the Cats in the Cradle dad who just is out there?
Harry Chapin.
Who was it?
Harry Chapin.
Yeah, Harry Chapin. That's right. Am I going to be that guy, you know? Or am I going to be an inspiring father like Dan Fogelberg wrote the song about his father? And I had this realization that my behavior, my approach to this will mark you. Like nobody has a choice what they're born in, but like we're in the legal system now, right? Like you could go to anybody. And I think we lose sight of the fact that everybody comes into this world like that, right? Everybody comes into the world dependent, needy, helpless, don't know anything.
Yeah.
And so much of who we become is shaped by the people that are around us, the people that are caring for us, the people, our mom, our dad, our teachers. You know, I hear the way teachers sometimes today talk to kids, and I'm like, you're in such an opportune place to make a difference in these kids' lives, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
They'll remember you're just frustrated and having a bad day, and you make an off comment to a kid about,
and you ruin them.
And you ruin them for life.
Yep.
And or the flip side of that, you're an inspiration to them. You know, you don't know it, but maybe they are where they are successfully in life because you believed in them and no one else did, you know. And that's where I do think, to bring it back, that's where I think empathy gets lost. Like, even for this guy that did this act, like, his life's forever changed. I mean, I know she's forever gone. I'm not comparing them. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to, like, in any way minimize the damage that was done. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that empathy thing goes both ways, right?
It does. It does. I mean,
so
you know, I think that one of the things is, you know, a lot of us don't have empathy for the ICE agents and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're human beings. Now, I'm not empathizing with them. I'm of the mindset. Well, let me say this. I empathize with them as human beings. I don't empathize them with the position that they hold, because from the standpoint of the position that they hold, I say, fuck ICE. That's kind of where I land.
Yeah. But to me, that's more of a systemic response. Correct. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and again, I am in no way trying to compare the two and say this was her life. And I'm very concerned about the state-sponsored violence. And that's why I brought up Eastern Europe and Russia, and, you know, even in Africa, where they can't hold it together. They can't have an election. You know, the Ivory Coast in what was 2011 or something, or maybe it was even prior to that.
You look at the collapse of Liberia. That's another good example.
Yeah. And even Kenya, which is considered one of the most peaceful countries in Africa, in 2008, you know. People have no idea how precious what we have had, with all of our faults in this country, compared to other societies. And we're just pissing it away. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I know that you're, you know, that you have a time constraint. So I
can go for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I want to throw something out here, because there's a quiet danger that we have to process in all of this, and the things that a hardened heart does, right? You know, they say, well, that's just the way it is. It is what it is, right? Or they say things like, well, they did it to themselves, right? Or they say, well, I just don't care anymore. I don't give a fuck, right? And then they say, finally, facts don't care about feelings. You know, but these same people that say facts don't care about feelings, they're in their own feelings, right? And I want to say all of this leading up to this, like, because there has to be an antidote, there has to be a call to action in all of this, and this is where I want to hit this, and then I'll kick it over to you to close it out. But it's like a soft heart is not naive; it's resilient, and resilience is such an undervalued trait, such an undervalued characteristic, you know, because a resilient heart can hold boundaries without hatred.
Yes, 100%.
A resilient heart can disagree without dehumanizing.
Correct.
A resilient heart can change its mind without collapsing. And that's a big thing, because we think that sometimes that when we change our mind that it's a sign of weakness, but it's really not. The mind that has the ability to change, the mind that has the agility and the flexibility to change, is really the mind that has the capacity for growth. And last but not least, the resilient feel pain without passing it on.
Yeah.
I don't have to make you feel my pain in order for me to process my pain.
Yeah. That's such a good point right there.
Yeah. So it's like, I want to feel my pain, but I
Mhm.
don't want everybody else to necessarily feel my pain. So now watch this. This is where empathy comes in, right? Because empathy would come in and says, okay, I can't necessarily feel your pain. That's just like when you talk about Black people in America, or Native Americans in America, or women in America,
Right.
there are certain segments of the population where you cannot
Right.
feel their pain, but you
Correct.
can have empathy. You can say, okay, I see what it is that you've gone through.
Right.
And I empathize with you. I feel your pain. I see what you're going through. And that's the big things, is like, hard hearts survive.
Oh yeah, that's
Hard hearts survive, but soft hearts, they heal and transform. They pass on something to humanity that makes humanity better. The hard heart survives, but it's surviving in a silo. It's the survival. It's Darwinian. It's the survival of the fittest. But the soft heart not just creates a condition where it survives, but it creates a climate where everyone
You
survives.
know, you bring up such a good point there, Derrick, that I think we need to take some time with that. I mean, yeah, I got stuff to do, but it's such a good point. Such a good point, because yeah, like, it's weird to, like, I get it if you're marginalized in this society, if you're really are genuinely trying to survive as a minnow among sharks. But what's baffling to me is that you have people who are doing well. Like, survival is not the issue. You know, like, the bills are paid. We're taking our vacations.
Yeah,
We got 5 vehicles when we only need 2.
for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have all this free time to sit there and binge on Netflix because we're not working 3 jobs or whatever.
Yep.
And yet you really hit on something, like, that people in that situation somehow respond to these situations from a survival mode
Yeah.
perspective. Like, we're fighting for food, we're fighting for shelter, we're
Right.
you know what I mean? There's this basic animalistic Darwinian, as you put it, response to these kinds of situations, as though our survival depends on it. You know, my God, we better get the Somalians out of Minnesota. It's just, what the hell is up? What is it about Minnesota, right? I'm like,
Well, like, here's the thing. Minnesota is a very special place, and I can speak from experience, having lived there, and
okay,
that my dad lives there.
yeah,
And so
okay,
I have a big connection to Minnesota. My youngest brother lives there.
okay,
A lot of my family members, I have a big connection to Minnesota. And yes, there is an empathy that exists in Minnesota that doesn't exist in a lot of other places. And that empathy draws people. It's like when people talk about the huddled masses yearning to be free, Minnesota is kind of like the embodiment of that. I'm going to tell you a story, and this is where I'm going to tip out, is
uh-huh,
that my dad moved to Minnesota when he was a teenager from Decatur, Illinois. Now, I don't know what happened with my dad's life, but something happened. They said, you need to get out of Decatur, Illinois and go to Minnesota. Now, part of the reason why Minnesota was an attractive option because my dad had an uncle, Odell, who was married to a white woman, Phyllis. And that was absolutely taboo in Decatur, Illinois in the 1950s.
Okay.
So they moved to Minnesota and they built a life, and they built a good life. They raised kids and they had a good life. So my grandmother decided that whatever it was that my dad did, he needed to be in Minnesota to get past that. So my dad finished high school in Minnesota, and that shaped a lot of his beliefs. It's like my dad's an interesting guy because I call him the equal opportunity abuser. Because he doesn't have a whole lot of love for black folks, and he doesn't have a whole lot of love for white folks, and he just basically thinks the society as a whole is fucked up. Even though now, as he gets older, his heart is softening. I can see him, going through changes, and it's a beautiful thing. But Minnesota has long been a place where people could go and really just kind of live a relaxed life. And I don't know, I think that a lot of it has to do with the Scandinavian Moors, because the Scandinavians, people from Finland and Sweden, right, Denmark, they came over to Minnesota in droves, and Minnesota is almost a state that's exclusively founded by these people. But they brought their social mores over, and that's how they built their society. So Minnesota is a very liberal state. And so I think that's part of the deal. And then when you talk about MAGA, Minnesota is almost the poster child for what a state should not be, because they lack empathy and compassion, and they think, well, Minnesota is just a state full of liberal pansies that roll over for every, but this is what I can say, having had experience living in Minnesota, having my dad living in Minnesota. My two of my siblings grew up there. Well, shoot, not two of them, four of my siblings grew up there. My two oldest and my two youngest all grew up there. So their views of society, their views of humanity are all shaped by that. Minnesota is a incubator for a compassionate society. And that's where I'm gonna drop off. This has really been a great conversation, and I think that we left a lot on the table here, a whole lot.
We did,
and I hope that at some point we can come back to it. But I want to go ahead and start landing the plane so that you can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it really has. I mean, it really. I don't know, man. Just kind of touched my heart. Just thinking about these issues, because I've really taken the attitude, and I watched the video, and I've kind of followed it, but I really took the attitude like, I don't know. It's just hard to engage these issues anymore for me. You know what I mean?
It is, and like the last thing I want to close out with is that that there's a religious aspect to this too, and that comes through fundamental Christianity, through Christian nationalism, through a lot of those pathways. But one of the things where religion encourages the hardening of hearts. It rewards the hardening of hearts because it creates something that's predictable, that's controllable, that's defensive of the system, and that is immune to inconvenient empathy. And those are things that that's where I want to close. I mean, it's like, man,
I love that phrase, inconvenient empathy. I love that.
And let me say this for the record, that empathy is never convenient.
Yeah.
It's always difficult, but it has to happen. It's like John F. Kennedy said, we do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. let's really focus on the hard thing. I mean, what are the hard things that we have to tackle in order to improve our society as a whole? And let's do those things. Let's not shirk them. Let's not procrastinate on them. Let's not sweep them under the rug. Let's make them happen. And that's my closing.
Yeah, that's a strong closing. Yeah, religion is very tribal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us live. Sorry, I got to cut it short.
No, it's okay, man.
But really good. I'm gonna go back and watch it. You really, I love this, Derrick, because yeah, like what I was saying before. What am I trying to say? I love how you make us think about things. I don't know how else to say it. That feels empty and shallow.
But here's the thing, that goes both ways, man. Because I've said this. I say this to my wife. I say it to my friends. That every like I'll just say this. I had breakfast with Jew this morning, right? Yeah. And Jew was going through a whole lot of things, and he's recently gotten out of the hospital. But I had breakfast with him. We had a good time. We sat up and had breakfast and talked for a couple of hours. And the thing that I say, the common denominator between you and Jude with me is that 100% of the time that I have a conversation with either one of you, I walk away a better person. 100%.
I agree.
I'm a better person because of you.
I agree. I love that guy. I'd love to engage with him more, but at your wedding, just having the chance to be with you. Meet with him.
Yeah.
And then he and his wife sat by me at the reception. And I just so enjoyed that time.
And we're going to drag him on the show one night and, get him to, because he's hilarious,
Yeah, he is.
But that's the thing, and I think that for everybody that's listening, that if you don't have friends that challenge you,
yeah,
and that's the thing, Aaron. You don't just kind of you're not an echo chamber. You're not just somebody that, oh well, hey Derrick, I love everything you say. No, that you challenge me. You'll say, did you think about this? And that causes me to process and analyze things in such a way that in the end I'm a better person. And that's what friends should do.
Yeah,
and you do that for me.
Yeah, you do it for me as well, and I'm glad we approached this topic. We should maybe do a follow-up because I think it's really important. I think that is. I know, and I was partly responsible for this, but I remember you were writing a book. Love is the answer to all things, or something. I can't remember. You have to forgive me for. But you might be right. You might be right.
Well, this is the thing. I think that when you look at energy, from a scientific perspective, and you look at what love is elementally, that I think that love is the supreme power of the universe. I think that love triumphs over all physical properties. And I think that if we act on that, and love being at its elemental core, empathy and compassion, that if we're empathetic and compassionate toward first of all, if we're empathetic and compassionate toward ourselves, because I think that part of the problem is that we beat ourselves up, we bully ourselves, and that becomes an outgrowth of how we interface with humanity. We can't be any better to others than we are to ourselves. So if we're empathetic and compassionate to ourselves, then we find it in our hearts to be the same to others.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the key is. That's if I could say that's the answer, that's the answer.
Yeah, I do think that love ultimately sound like Rob Bell here. Love ultimately wins.
Yeah, I love Rob Bell. I've been talking about Rob Bell all week.
Interesting. I do believe that. I do believe that. But even if it doesn't triumph, right? I do think it's our only hope.
It is.
I think it's our best hope.
It is.
And you've kind of really made that the centerpiece for me tonight, because really that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and I needed that, and I appreciate that.
Listen,
so I'm gonna leave it with that.
Listen, I've learned something, back for when I was preaching, and you and I have talked about this, that if it doesn't resonate with you, you can't preach it to anyone else.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. But anyway, man, hey, I love you. I love all of you. Thank you for taking time out of your Friday evening to share this time with us. And I'm grateful, and I think that this is something that will help you, that it will bless you. Follow Aaron on his Facebook page, follow him on YouTube, check out what he has to say, check out his Sunday morning programs, which are absolutely mind expanding. And I'm doing, I'm going to get back to my Kaizen Daily next week. I just kind of fell off the wagon this week and didn't do anything, but I'm going to get back to it. And I really believe that if you will take small steps toward self-improvement, be introspective, and say, what can I do to make me better on a daily basis, that you will. And that's where I am. Great
stuff, man. Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I'm looking forward to doing these again consistently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So thank you.
Before you go, I got an idea, man. There's something that we talked about before, and I think that this is a great idea for a show name: Growing in Real Time. This is what we do.
I love it.
This is what we do. So let's keep growing in real time and help others grow in real time with us.
I love that. And I think we should explore how to expand the podcast.
Brilliant.
All right, bud. Love you.
All right, love you too, man. Talk to you later.